ahead of their presentations, and how exciting today we've got the founder, Val.
No, the father of Project Controls, maybe.
Oh,
Now on
hello.
this episode, we get to meet Mr. Anil Godhawale. How are you, sir?
I'm very well. Thanks, gents. Really appreciate this opportunity. I mean, this project speaker series, podcast series, is indeed a great initiative, and I think Project Controls Expo it's going to add a great value to the Project Controls Expo, primarily because of the lot of initial understanding and overview we are going to give it to our audience to help them plan the event. So, yep, thank you very much, and I really look forward to this new initiative we are starting from today.
I agree. I agree. It's exciting to have you on board. And obviously, we're big supporters of the Project Controls Expo. So before we jump into everything about what you can find at this year's Project Controls Expo, here's Dale with a little bit of your bio.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Val. So let's jump into it. So Anil is passionate about project controls and working in multiple capacities for implementation and enhancement of this growing subject. He is Managing Director of Projcon Group, which is a project controls.
I think it's breaking up.
You still with us, Dale?
Project.
Dale, you're breaking up.
Is he still with us? Mr. Dale Foong.
I think Dale is having a bit of a network issue.
That's okay.
Well, you can hear me very well?
I can hear you very well, sir.
All right.
I might just finish with that. So Anil is the Managing Director of Projcon Group, the Project Controls Consultancy, the founder of Project Controls Online, Global Project Controls e-network and knowledge base, Project Manager for Project Controls Expo, the largest Project Controls event show ever. And finally, the founder and program director at Project Controls Institute, the blended Project Controls learning platform. Anil's professional experience spans over 19 years at corporate and field offices, offering diverse and in-depth exposure to implementation of project controls on a range of EPC projects, oil and gas, upstream and downstream, CCUs. I didn't even know what CCUs was. Carbon capture units. There you go.
Carbon capture units, yeah.
Power projects and pipelines. Wow, what a bio, Mr. Anil. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Thank you. I mean, as you could see, I was a hardcore project controls person throughout my life. And in fact, even now, I would say that. It's just that I'm working in a different capacity, but project controls was always something which I wanted to be in and try to do different things. And I think I was a little bit blessed in getting the right experience and the right people around for me to shape the career, and which is what, brought me here. So, yeah, thanks for the intro. I really appreciate that.
No, not a problem. Now, before we get into it, I think I just want to check if Dale's back online. Dale, are you with us again?
I think so. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes, we can.
We can.
Awesome.
We can.
What is a live broadcast without technical issues? What, all the drama
Exactly.
up front.
Exactly. Well, at least you know it's not scripted, right? Did you want to kick off, Dale, with the first question?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry. So thanks for picking up the bio there. It's an amazing bio. I think, when we spoke to Anil on the main podcast, Anil, I think we said you epitomize, what project controls is. So it's amazing, to sort of get your story and, where Project Controls Expo started and, what made you think we need an expo, and the journey and how it's evolved. So I wonder if you could take us back to the day when the light bulb went off and you went, we need to do this.
All right. I mean, this story goes back to 11 years, actually. If there was no COVID last year, we would have had our 10th anniversary of a UK Project Controls Expo. So, yeah, it's around 10, 11 years back when I was looking for some sort of a platform where we can share, discuss, and share ideas and talk about the advancement in project controls. I was struggling to find one. And when there's such a challenge or there's a situation, you try to find solution. And I did exactly same thing, but unfortunately there wasn't any. And then there was some really supportive friends, colleagues I had around me, and they suggested, why are you looking for it? Why don't you create it? And I said, well, that's a bit of a challenge for me, because primarily I'm a core project controls guy. I've never been to into the expos and conferences and events. But you need a bit of a madness to do some certain stupid things in your life, and then this is one of those things which I did, and luckily it worked out well. But I'm not encouraging people to do such stupid things. But the thing is, what happened is, when around 10 years back, I started understanding where we are in terms of project controls. One of the main reason why I started this whole thing was the lack of understanding about project controls across industry. I was predominantly from the oil and gas, and when I used to speak to the people in infrastructure or civils or railway projects, I mean, there was a huge gap between what actually they believe project controls is and what actually project controls I used to practice in oil and gas. I mean, at that point of time, the maturity of project controls was much higher in ONG than the other functions. So just wanted to basically understand how the other function, other sectors apply project controls. And when I realized that there's a huge gap, and I was working with multiple professional bodies in drafting various documents, and because project controls was my passion, I said, well, guys, this is not right. We need to do something about it. And that is where the idea of Project Controls Expo was born. And the very first event I did in University College of London. It was an academic facility, a college, and with zero background or zero experience in events management, I tried to put up something. And trust me, until one day before, I didn't have any sponsors. Okay,
Wow.
I had a great agenda, and the speakers was really great. But from events perspective, event management perspective, let me honestly confess that was a disaster, because that was not my forte. But what was the good part of that event was that the topics were very relevant, the speakers were relevant, and we were talking the real issues there, and we were talking about the right elements, right areas, and the diverse industry representation was also there. It was a 2 days event. And I still recall people from nuclear to defense to oil and gas and infra, everyone was there. That was the first platform where everyone felt that, oh, hang on a second, project controls is applied here as well. Okay, it's a different thing that what you think project controls is, but at least you call it project controls. And so that was the first networking engagement. And a day before, I think 5 o'clock by 5 o'clock on the day before on the event, I got a call from one of the sponsors, and they said, I'll sponsor you a part of it, which was like 15-20% of the whole cost. But that's fine. I mean, that wasn't a very expensive event anyway, because it was in a campus area and it was relatively cost effective. But that went very well in terms of the content. That was the key takeaway from that event. And then within a week or so, I was flooded with messages said, Anil, you should do it again. And we will support you, not just morally, but also commercially. So the next event, we did it in Twickenham Stadium. And a lot of people ask me, why Twickenham Stadium? I mean, who does such serious topics in the stadiums? I said, guys, I'm trying to look at it from different perspective. Project controls is all about energy. Project controls is all about passion. And we usually see these things in sports. So why don't we go to that sports area, and then charge ourselves, and then connect ourselves there. And that was one of the reasons I choose the sports complexes. And another reason was that whatever conferences I attended in the past were kind of little boring, in the sense that, a very traditional format where in a closed space, people are just talking, or one person talking, another people listening. And I said, we need some fundamental change in this thing. And when we went to the stadium, we added a lot of other activities to make it more lively. The stadium tour, some sort of a music and things like that, just trying to make it more informal. And I think it picked up from there. So the second event, we had around 20 odd sponsors. It went for a couple of days. We got 300, 400 delegates. And then we grew from there. So we did it for 3 years in Twickenham Stadium. And then we outgrew. Then we did it in Arsenal Stadium. For 5 years, we rented the whole of the Arsenal Stadium. And in 2019, we realized now Arsenal Stadium is also falling short our requirements. So in 2020, we moved to the Wembley. Of course, we couldn't do it last year. So
Yeah.
now we are going to do it in the Wembley. So Wembley is a much bigger stadium than Arsenal. It's iconic location. And while I was going, it was expanding slowly in the UK. A lot of my friends in other part of the world, especially Australia, they were encouraging me to come over there and try and replicate this experience, because consistently for 3 or 4 years, I had a lot of delegates coming all the way from Australia, India, and the Asia Pacific region. And with a lot of encouragement from them, in 2018, we did the first one in Australia, and I wanted to keep the same format. Luckily, that format worked. Kind of the same venue, which is MCG, Melbourne Cricket Ground, every
Yeah.
cricketer kind of dream location. And that's how we kickstarted the Melbourne. And then nearer to the Asia Pacific, within the Asia Pacific region, I had a lot of requests from Singapore, Kuala Lumpur area. So we started over there. While we're doing so, we realized that one of the way we can acknowledge, reward the project controls, or one of the ways we can professionalize project controls, which is one of our mission, is to acknowledge and reward the good work our professionals are doing. And that is how the awards were started. So 2017, we did the first awards in the UK, and 2018, the second one. And in Australia, we did our first awards in 2019. And I think that really kicked off well, because people started connecting to the project controls. They were proudly telling, we are a project controls. Trust me, I had so many experiences where a lot of guys, when they tell someone that I'm a project controllers, half of the people didn't understand what they do. So they just say, I'm just managing projects. So, or they maybe just try to say, I'm one of the project management team member, which is fine. But project controls, the awareness wasn't significantly, was not significantly available there. So I think in the last 10, 11 years, we've grew significantly. The UK show, we had around 1,600 delegates in 2019. Melbourne had around 700 for the diverse population in Australia. I think that was an incredible number with the second event.
Yeah.
And last year we had a pandemic, and the whole community was looking to have the similar experience, but of course we couldn't deliver it. And then that is where we thought of doing the virtual one. And the virtual was successful, super successful. I mean, I wasn't sure that what I'm doing is it right. But then when I look at the feedback and when I look at the statistics post event, that was amazing. I mean, we had over 91, 92 countries. We had delegates from over 91 countries, and 3 days, 24/7, close to 200 sessions. So it was like a marathon. I mean, whole of my team was like dead tired after that. But I think that was a super, super experience. And going forward, we expect to replicate, we continue the virtual expo, because I think that spans across the world, primarily because of 24/7, every part of the world can participate in that. And there is a multiple language functionality with it. So it has got its own flavor, unique appeal. So that would continue, plus these 3 expos. And we also going to soon go into 2 more locations in a year or so. So it will be, physical events will be spanned across the world, along with the virtual event. So that is where the journey is. But if you ask me what was the vision before and what is the vision now, the vision earlier was to generate the awareness, which I think I'm very pleased to suggest that, we have achieved it to a large extent in the UK. If I look around, I think project controls is everywhere. The defense, primarily, that's a big example I can give. Ministry of Defense and DNS. At the moment, there are 1,400 project controls people. And 10 years back, there was nothing like that. I mean, or there was a very, very minimalistic project controls visibility there. So now the infra, the government, everywhere there's a project controls. And in this 10 years, there's a lot of advancement took place, whether it is qualification, whether it is standards, but still there's a long way to go. So the now vision is to continuously advance it, number one. Number two, to try and professionalize it by doing some standardization. Now the thing gets more complicated because the whole way of doing the project controls is changing rapidly, thanks to the technology, thanks to the upcoming areas like BIM. So it is going to make the things a little bit more complex, but I think it is important that we make a start, and I think the start has already been made, and the elements of BIM and the items like artificial intelligence, they are slowly getting adopted within the project controls domain. So if I look at the UK, uh, the two qualifications which we have drafted, the level 3 and level 4 depend degree level qualifications, they covers pretty much a very wide spectrum of project controls. In addition to that, we also have the standards in BIM and IM, but eventually somewhere they need to meet. And when they meet, how do we bring consistency, standardization across industry and across geographical regions? That is where I think we need to reach. And one of the other objective which we need to look to achieve is how we can bring all the professional bodies together, and if there is a way to make them work in a more collaborative manner and build some standards, in project control that can be applied pan industry. So the one of the big achievements I personally feel we have achieved in Project Controls Expo is we managed to bring a wide range of professional bodies on board. If I start from Australia, ISEC, International Cost Engineering Council, Australian Institute of Project Management, PMI, Engineers Australia, ACES. If I come to the Malaysia, PMI, IPMA, then I keep moving it to the Middle East and India, IIQS, then going to the UK, we got the ACOST, and if I move to the US, AAC is global, they are supporting the event. So all these professional bodies are coming to a single platform, and that's amazing, because then they would be able to understand what everyone is doing, and they're interacting with the wider industry to allow them to come up with something that would basically contribute towards that professionalization objective. Sorry, I took too long. I went into
No, not at all.
but I think, yeah. So yeah, that was a long, I would say, summary.
It's a great summary, because
Absolutely.
it's a whole bunch in one. And you took us the full journey, and Val and I were just so engrossed in the story and where it's headed and the vision. It's great. It's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah.
And just to comment on one or two things you said there before I hand over to Val, Anil, you said you were lucky, but I think it was the famous South African golfer Gary Player that says, the more I practice, the luckier I get, right? So you got to do a bit of homework. You're not just lucky, but it takes a lot of hard work as well. And for all of the hard work you've done, you and your team, and putting the expos together and bringing everyone together in what you've said, I think we need to be thankful for that. So appreciate everything you've done to contribute to the community. And I guess this is another form of just sharing the knowledge out there with the audience. But Val, over to you.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, no, I was wrapped in that, Anil, because obviously what's coming through is your passion in the profession. And I think without the Project Controls Expo, we might not still know what Project Controls is. Obviously, it's now about organizing ourselves and getting that standardization across the globe. But I think through virtual as well, you did something different last year with the Project Controls virtual. But before we get into the very specifics of what we can expect, what's happening with Project Controls Expo this year? What's new? What's different? What's fun for you?
So for this year, of course, if everything goes fine, we're going to do the physical events. I'm still hoping,
Fingers crossed
for that. So that's the new thing. And what we're also doing is we are changing the format from 1 day to 2 days. And the first day, there will be a full partner showcase on the first day, which we didn't do it before. And we're going to do some workshops on the day one, which is a deep dive into particular topics. So for in the UK, we are planning for a BIM workshops, 2 BIM workshops and 2 artificial intelligence and project controls workshop, where actually delegates would be working on certain things, and create some sort of a deliverable there. So those are the 2 parallel workshops happening in the UK. In the Malaysia, we are running the AAC CCP certification course on the day one, along with the BIM workshop. In Australia, we're doing the similar thing. The AAC CCP certification course will be running on day one, along with the BIM workshops. And of course, there will be a PSP workshop on the day two as well. So that is the big change, apart from having the partner showcase also on the first day. So, and in terms of the global, I think what we would be aiming to do is to go much more wider regions, and looking to get much more enhanced representation from the global community, trying to build up from where we left last year. So it's just more about the size, the magnitude for the virtual event. But for the other three events, the format is slightly, not, I wouldn't say modified, but it has been expanded. And as you know, the UK event is happening in a completely brand new venue. It's a massive upscaling. Until now, all my events were not so professionally managed in terms of events management perspective. But technically, they were great. Now
Sure.
there's a lot of efforts going into from the events management perspective. So we have got some really great team members who comes from the exhibition industry backgrounds. Until now, either we were all project controls people, or you know, or around that domain. But now that we are trying to enhance the experience by focusing on the events management element as well. So I think all I can say is we are trying to raise our own bar and try to add more value by bringing a few more elements into it.
No, that's brilliant. I think that's what we need, is that project controls applied to event management, where every year we're continuously improving. And that's what I'm impressed about with the Project Controls Expo, is every year there's a little bit more. You mentioned AI and BIM, and there's a lot of questions out there in the project controls community, digital engineering. You know, where does this all sit, and how does, like you said, project controls adapt to it while still standardizing the profession? There's a lot of questions out there for people. So I think what you're mentioning there with the workshops and having some interactive rather than just being presented at, I think is a really value add. But maybe you can tell us a little bit more as well about the virtual experience, because I remember last year it was incredible. Obviously, we were locked up, everyone was locked up, and we still managed to get this quality of speakers 24/7. You had hundreds and hundreds of people talking about all sorts of subjects. I literally had it on, Anil, in my background while I was working. I had it on another screen because I didn't want to miss anything. Up until about 11 o'clock at night, I was like, okay,
Wow.
I can't take any more, but this is fantastic stuff. What can they expect this year in the virtual? What's new? What's different? What's better?
So, as you rightly said, it was very exhaustive last year for everyone. So we're trying to make it more relaxing. So we had 4 streams running in parallel. We are making it 3 streams running in parallel this year. And rather than 4-day event, we're trying to make it 3 days. But the focus will be, as I mentioned, to reach to much more wider regions. So there were, as I said, we had a reach to 95 odd countries last year. So which is around 60% of the world. So the intent is to capture the remaining 40%. So that's the number one thing. And there were a lot of lessons learned, and I must upfront honestly say that on the technology part of it, the system or the platform perspective. So we're trying to make it much more leaner, much more faster, and much more accessible. We are adding a lot of features into it. So that's the second thing which we are trying to do, so that, you know, people get much more better experience. So the way we designed the platform is that no one needs to download anything, and just a web link that is clean, because many of our clients from the defense background, and for security reasons, you know, their system doesn't allow anything which gets installed on the machine. So for that reason, we had to come up with a solution that is completely browser based. And so we are just continuously trying to improve the speed at the back end to allow it to process such a huge amount of information. You know, 3 or 4 sessions running in parallel, couple of thousand people on the platform from multiple regions. You know, interacting with 40 plus exhibitors. So this year, the main focus is on improving the experience, and not just from the audience perspective, but from the speakers perspective also. We are trying to get much more diverse representation. So if I look at last year's event, we got majority from Europe, Australia, Australia, and Latin America. This year, we're trying to get a representation from Middle East and some Asia Pacific countries, the China, the Russia, and the Japan. So just trying to
Wow.
get everyone on the board, and hopefully, these things works out fine, and we reach where we want to.
That's fantastic, and I think that's aspirational. And I was actually one of the speakers. I think Dale was as well last year. And we, as speakers, I thought the platform was fantastic. So I hope the speakers come this year with a lot of content, because you've got everything else seems like under control. Makes sense, project controls. But also, I think the thing is about ED and I. We talk about equality, diversity, and inclusivity. One of the things I think about, because we all have a story about falling into project controls as such. We never kind of finished school or uni and said, you know what, I'm going to do project controls. That's what I'm going to do. I actually say we're all a little bit damaged and we need to control our environment, so we end up in project controls. But how do we attract young people to the industry? Because I feel like I know we're all really quite connected. It's a very small world if you think about the project controls global community. How do we get young people into project controls? Because we're going to need the volume. We certainly have the projects.
No, definitely. I mean, this has been acknowledged by many countries already, and I can definitely suggest UK. And the steps with what we have taken here is to start the qualifications, the early qualifications. So anyone who has done a GCSE, like 17 years old, 16 years old, they can directly get into the project control. So we have qualification for those young people, and so that's one thing you can do. And what is important is that this initiative should be driven from the top. And again, when I look back the example in the UK, there is an apprenticeship in project controls which has been started by the Department of Education and kind of funded also by the government. And they kindly included project controls into one of the apprenticeship after realizing the demand for it. And of course, industry pushed for it. So I think it's a joint initiative by the industry, by the government, okay, and of course the community need to participate as well, like various community groups, they need to come together. So as I said, it needs to flow from the top, and they can be pushed from the bottom, but the initiative comes from the top, then the whole supply chain fall into the place. In a typical projects world, and that is what pretty much applies over here as well. So government suggested, okay, there's a level 3 project controls qualification. We acknowledge that it's needed, and now if I look at it, people, the young kids, or I would say 16, 17-year-old students, they are looking, or they are thinking about project controls career, and they're stepping into it, which wasn't the case few years back. And I think that was an encouragement provided by the industry and as well as by the Department of Education. So number one is creating a qualifications or a standards like what we have in the UK, encouraging the young people to get into the project controls. Another initiative which has taken place in some countries is project management, not project controls. Project management is being considered as a part of a high school education, because project management, project controls is a life skill. The way I look at it, it should start much early. So that could be another way of integrating, or maybe promoting project controls to the young people, that introducing that subject in a very early stages. So, and once you are into the field, and then when you see the benefits, and then they encourage the young, the next generation to get into it. So now if I look at some of the 16, 17-year-old project controls, which started with us 3 years back, because we have a college as well, and who runs apprenticeship. Now they're so excited, they're so happy. They said that is one of the best decisions I have made in my life. And they're giving that message to the younger ones, and they said, wow, really, thanks, we didn't tell, now that we know it. And that chain reaction, and that message is spreading. And I think the initiative like this are must, coming up with the qualification, industry acknowledging it, government supporting it, and industry trying to roll it out in the community. That I think should be the way.
No, that's fantastic. I completely agree with you. I think it's exciting. It is a life skill as well. As like you said, you do learn how to think and approach things. It's a way of thinking, a bit like engineering in a way,
Yeah.
to solve problems, basically
Yep.
complex problems. But we'll stop there, and I will hand over to Dale to ask you a few more questions.
Yeah, thanks, Val. It's great, Daniel. I mean, there's so much we need to do to, as you say, encourage the next generation, right? And you talk about some of the various strands and things like how data science is becoming more a bigger part of what we do as controls,
Yep.
rather than
Absolutely.
just people producing bland reports in PowerPoint or whatever the case may be. That starts becoming exciting, right, for the next generation.
True.
And so I guess also part of it is podcasts. And so as we head into the end of this particular episode, I want to kind of end if we just venture into, so why podcast now? Why are we going into podcasts? What's the traction? What's the output? What can listeners get from these podcasts?
Well, these project speakers podcast series, one of the primary reason for starting this is so that our prospective delegates get an advance visibility on who the speakers are and know more about them, what they're going to talk about it. Of course, I don't expect our speakers to discuss the whole topic in this podcast series.
Mm.
It's kind of a trailer. They will just talk about, okay, this is the area which we are going to capture, and this is the area we're going to discuss around. And while they are there, being a subject matter expert in their own area, then they can discuss in detail the wider elements of wherever they're from. Uh, but giving a gist of it, a trailer of it, that would, I believe, would help our delegates to plan the conference, especially because we have got 5 or 6 streams running in parallel. So now, if I am a delegate and if I look at
Mm.
it, oh, okay, now that I have heard 60 or 70 odd podcasts, I know who is going to talk what. Now I have a much better, clearer understanding of whom I need to attend. So it basically, this would allow them to make a more informed decision or a choice to and make most out of the conference rather than making the decisions on the event to see, oh, hang on a second, where should I mean, they can look into the agenda, but there's a very limited information we
Mm-hmm.
can put in the agenda, and then that wouldn't do justice. And in the past, I have noticed a lot of delegates realize, oh, hang on a second, I should have attended that. I mean, of course, you can listen to the recording later on, which we
Mm.
Yeah.
posted for free for everyone, but what they felt is that, oh, I should have attended it. Had
It's not
I
the
wished I
same, right?
had some more information about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So I think we've taken that feedback head on, and I think this podcast series, I mean, all 4 expos combined, we may have around 400 odd speakers. So we'll see how many we can accommodate them. But the intent is to introduce as many as possible, through this series, so that they get the best visibility of what's going to be there, and they can plan their time for the conference. It's just more about effective utilization of the time. That's all Project Controls is about.
That is hugely,
Brilliant.
hugely exciting. I mean, Val and I are going, yes, we get to spend a bit of time with, the speakers before they present. But not
Happy
only
days.
that, this is live.
Yeah.
So if
That's
you're
right.
watching this live, send us questions. If if we run out of time now, the next one is live. They're all live. Send in questions live. We'll try and get them answered live. So I guess it's also feel not just for the audience, but also for the speakers, to the types of questions that the audience would be looking for ahead of their actual presentation at whether it's virtual or whether it's the actual physical podcast, physical expos, wherever that may be in whichever country. So that is fantastic. I just want to come to you, Anil, as we sort of head to the end of this podcast, and wonder if there's just any final. Oh, we do have one question come in actually. Anil, can you share whom or which company was awarded in 2017-18?
No, I didn't get that question. Which company was awarded in 2018? Is the awards, if they're talking about, so there are 7 or 8 awards categories, and who gets which award is on our website, so they can just
Okay,
have a look at it. Assuming I am understanding or reading that question correctly.
fantastic. So all the awards are on the website. We'll put
Yes.
all the links in the show notes.
Yes.
Everyone can go to it. I'll list them at the end as well.
Yeah.
But as we head into the end of this podcast, Anil, any final thoughts you just want to leave the audience with?
Well, the only final thoughts would be that the journey has begun, but we still have a long way to go. We all need to continue to work together. Collaboration, as I keep saying, is the key towards achieving our objective, and that is professionalization, a more enhanced awareness and standardization of our function. So we all need to continue working toward that. And as Simon White said at the Australian Project Controls Expo in 2019, Project Controls is the new rock and roll. So let's do it, guys.
Rock on, rock on. Absolutely. What a way to sign off. Anil, thank you so much for your time, sharing all of the vision, the story this far. We're hugely excited to listen to the speakers as well and get some insight from them. Sure. So, folks, that is all we have time for on this episode. But you can catch all the guests, all the speakers coming up. Subscribe to all the platforms so you know when the next one is. For more information, as we said, check out ProjectControlExpo.com and ProjectChatterPodcast.com. Don't forget to subscribe, as we said, both on your podcast player and YouTube, so you don't miss the next one. A big thanks to Anil Godhawale, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you, guys.
From me and Val, it's bye for now.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye. Signing off.